Hello, everyone. My name's Mike Croxford. I'm from Crown Equipment and I am the chair of the AFITA Technical Committee. Craig?
Yeah, so Craig Williams from Clark Equipment. I'm the Deputy Engineering Chair. I've been in the industry about 25 years and I reckon Mike's been in there about the same amount.
Same, 22.
Yep. So we're bringing this to you with just a wee bit of background experience.
Yeah. So today we want to talk about safe operation of aged forklifts and talk about some of the experience we've seen in the industry with them to maintain them safely and what people should look out for if they have one or they are looking to purchase an aged piece of equipment. First of all, what is an aged piece of equipment? Typically, we would say it's something that's around 10 years old or maybe has around 10,000 hours of operation, and that will very much be dependent on the environment it's used in. So a normal operating environment would typically be one shift per day on a level surface indoors where typically the ambient temperature is around 25 to 40 degrees. Abnormal operating conditions would typically be where there's multi-shift operations, where there's harsh environments, it's dusty, wet, corrosive, or you may be operating outdoor or in a cold store or in a freezer environment.
There's a fair few of those out there, isn't there, Mike?
Yes, there certainly is.
I suppose one of the things when you're considering purchasing a second-hand piece of equipment, there's a number of checks, with that piece of equipment, whether it's, to be honest, whether it's equipment you've already got or you're looking to purchase used. Certainly from a WHS point of view for suppliers, like if the person's selling it to you or if you're looking to sell it off, there's various provisions for information of use, provision for supplying of the service history, and details of any faults and that sort of thing. So under a little bit different to selling a car privately, certainly suppliers of used fork trucks really do need to follow the WHS regs that say you got to provide the information, isn't it?
So purchasers, you really need to be aware of what you're looking for when you purchase equipment is, does it have a capacity plate that's in place that tells you that it's compliant to the Australian standards? Also check, is there availability of spare parts? Even though it's a second-hand or aged piece of equipment, if you're purchasing it from a dealer or from an agent, do they have backup and support? Can they provide warranty support? But you also want to be looking at some of the safety equipment on the truck, such as does it have a seat belt? And if it does, it is in good condition. Is the horn working? Safety lights, brakes, the overhead guard and the protective structures on the truck, are they in sound condition?
That's the thing, isn't it? So now that you've got your piece of equipment, or you've had it for ages, or you inherited it, or whatever, there's about maintaining it in a good, safe operating condition. Look, the operator manual will tell you like the basics, but again, that's probably based on a new truck or a newish truck, maybe not a truck that's 10 years old. But look, regardless, information in the operator manual, but you'll have your pre-operating checks. Look, there's a list of things there, things like condition of hydraulic hoses, condition of chains, forks, warning decals, oil leaks, condition of the tyres and wheels, including the lock rings, especially on the split rims. So there's checking aspects of that and knowing what to look for in that too, I think, is the other thing, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when you're doing an operational check for pre-start, you should also do a drive test, check the brakes, the braking distance, make sure all the hydraulic functions are working correctly, check the horn and the lights and make sure they're working properly, and do that in an area where it's open and there's no risk to anyone around you. So, once you've got your truck and you've started it and you're confident it's working, then you're okay to start operating. But I guess all that is post the fact that you know your truck's in good condition.
Well, that's right.
Yes.
And I suppose also with that is, like, we talk of pre-operating checks and the operating checks, but they really don't take that long to actually do they? It's not something it's a 10-minute job every shift or something like every morning. It really can be fairly quick to do and make sure it's safe.
So some of the things that you need to be mindful of when you're looking at an aged piece of equipment is the condition of some of the components like the hydraulic hoses, the chains, tyres and brakes. Typically with hydraulic hoses, if they're outside and they're weathered and exposed, the outer sheathing can become stiff and crack. And during operation of the mast, that can cause fatigue and lead to surface splits, which can cause oil leaks. So if you have poor condition of your hosing, it's always best to replace it. There are a lot of services that will provide replacement hoses and make them up on the spot, even for aged equipment, where the manufacturer may no longer have a presence in the market. So that's one major thing.
Well, I think, with hoses, it's the other thing you've got to consider is it's not just, the hose is degraded, we should replace it. What if it splits and breaks? And, if it does that, the machine doesn't work. But, I mean, one thing you've got to remember, isn't it, that these hoses are running at like 3,000 PSI. So you get a bit of a split in that and you happen to grab it or be near it at the same time, 3,000 PSI plus, 80 degrees Celsius, you've got a hydraulic pressure injury into your hand or whatever. That's a hospital. That's a very serious injury. Go and Google hydraulic pressure injury or just don't. There's gruesome pictures. So, it's hoses. It's just something. It's not just, it looks ugly and it's cracked and maybe I should or shouldn't. She'll be right. No, and be a danger.
Yeah, and typically the hoses that are going to fail are the ones through the mast, which are going to be in the proximity of the operator.
That's
so
true.
They can burst into the operator compartment. I think the next area that deserves a fair bit of attention is typically the forks. So forks can wear because they drag on the ground when they're lowered, because they're running in and out of loads all the time. So the area where forks tend to fail is because they wear at the heel, they get thin, and then they can suffer fatigue cracks from loading as well. So it's always important to check that area, and if it's not an area that you're familiar with or you understand, get somebody who's an expert to come and look at your forks, and even to do a simple crack test with a dye penetrant type test that's readily available. And there's also gauges available that can measure your fork thickness to make sure they're within specification. And really, the risk you have is, one, the fork bends or the fork actually fails. It's in all my time in the industry, I've seen 2 fork failures. It does happen, but it's very rare, but it can happen.
Yeah, and I think one of the things with the forks is, it's not a hard check to check it. Like if you get 10% wear in the base compared to sort of the vertical piece, that's when you're starting to look at, okay, maybe I should get rid of those forks because it's now no longer able to lift that full load that you're trying to do, and you don't want one of those things to snap on you.
No, and losing a load at height is not something you want to do.
No.
So the next area that is worth checking is the lift change. Now, the lift chains are a critical safety item. They are joined to the mast through the anchor pin. It's probably the thing that holds everything together.
It is. When you're lifting 3 ton or whatever you're lifting on your forks, it's those chain anchor pins that are literally holding everything up.
And typically with chains, what can happen is they will stretch over time just from loading and fatigue cycling. So the pins within the chain can wear and they can fail. But the other thing that we do see with aged equipment, particularly if it's stored and not protected well, is that you get links that freeze. And so the train doesn't run through the mast properly, and that can lead to failures as well. The other major area with an aged truck is that there are a number of structural fasteners within an assembly of a forklift, and that could be the ones that hold the counterweight on the back of the truck, hold the powertrain into the chassis, and also hold the mast and the lifting system into the chassis. So there's a number of ways that these fasteners can fail. They can get wear and fretting, which reduces the cross-section, can lead to them failing, can get tensile loads on them over time just through load cycling, which can eventually cause failure in tension, or you can get rust into them and you'll get a failure just through corrosion, through a weakening of it. So there's no hard and fast rules from manufacturers about when you should change structural fasteners, but certainly if you are going to purchase an older truck or you've got an older truck that's been stored, it is something you should look at and get someone with some expertise to assist in making a judgment of whether they should be replaced or not.
Yeah, certainly we've seen it in the bigger trucks, but look, the older, smaller trucks as well, with the mast pivot pin. And again, the trouble with that one, so that's the pin at the very bottom of the mast, basically connecting it to the truck. It's actually not something you can easily just see from just standing outside the truck. It's almost something that needs to be pulled out and checked.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see for any looseness or sloppiness when you're moving the mast to give an indication. But yeah, that one, I mean, that's a critical one, but that can be hard to see.
And particularly with the mast, if you have wear in your tilt cylinders, poor alignment of your tilt cylinders, and they don't stroke at the same rate.
Oh, yes.
You'll overload one side when they hit the end of stroke, and that can cause fatigue loading on one side, and you can see failures of those anchor bolts that hold the mast in place. So, again, these are things we learn from experience and
unfortunately,
things that you need to check with older trucks. I think the other thing that we need to look at with an aged truck is something that people probably don't think about too much, which is the structural welds. The chassis of the truck, the overhead guard structure, some of the main mountings for your drive line, for your mast, all those components are part of a welded assembly, and welds do fatigue. And typically what can happen is you will start to see a crack through the root of the weld, which will run along the weld. And if you do a simple crack test, you can identify that. Sometimes in speaking with a manufacturer, it is quite feasible to repair those. You can grind the welds out, run new welds in, and return the truck to a safe operating condition. The major risk you do have is more when the cracks run out of the weld into parent metal, and then you start looking at the strength of the structure and whether it's possible to do things like end drill the weld, the cracks, to try and mitigate the risk there to keep them in service, or whether it's not feasible to maintain them. So again, that's something where you'd need to have some expert analysis, but it's a simple test to do on an aged piece of equipment.
Yeah, I think the important part there is that you really do need a competent person. We'd suggest contacting the OEM, the manufacturer, your supplier, for some guidance on that, because they've got a better idea of which welds are truly critical and which ones are, I won't say cosmetic, but less important.
Yeah.
But then following from that, a competent welder that knows how to gouge and re-weld, and is it feasible to do that? Because once we start getting into parent metal, that is bad, and it can very quickly get to the point where you go, actually that's actually not worth repairing, or it's not safe to repair. And so the other thing with the talking to the manufacturer on some structural weld issues, as I said, that they know where the really critical ones are, and I'll tell you from our experience, again, we spoke about the mast pivot bearing, but the boss around that pivot pin, the pivot bush where that welds onto the chassis, that gets a massive load of stress, or every single lift, its whole life. So if there's going to be cracking, that's probably one of the first places that it'll crack, and then around the cylinder bases. So there's some areas, but it's good to clean the machine. May not have been cleaned for a very long time.
Yeah.
Clean it back and do the proper NDT structural testing on it.
Yeah, and one of the areas that probably doesn't get looked at too much, but depending on the applications, particularly harsh environments outdoors, is the pivot mounts for the steer beams.
And true.
Sometimes see some failures as well.
Yep.
And it's not nice when your steer system drops out of your truck unexpected. No. So I think the next part is about maintaining safe operating conditions and critical safety items. So there are a number.
There are a fair few. Just simple things like decals, like the safety decals. Now, one of the don't walk under the forks when they're lifted. The operator one sitting in the overhead guard of if it's rolling, stay with the truck, brace yourself, go with the roll, don't try and jump out. So there's the basic safety decals. It might be some of the maintenance decals telling you what type of oil and where to grease. Operator manual. I mean, that is a core one. I know that's people gets to be a little bit ho hum the operator's manual, but really there's a lot of really good information in that manual, both on safe operation and safe maintenance.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the operator manual is that it provides advice on hazards that can't be designed out.
True, yes.
So it is a critical for safe operation. And if there's not one with the truck, then you really should try to get the OEM to provide you with a replacement, because it is critical to safe operation.
That's right. And look, other things, you may have corrosion on the truck. And again, we've spoken about, around welds and areas. But I think one of the critical things here, though, is really that if there are issues, like stand the truck down till it's checked out. Don't just, she'll be right. Because unfortunately, that's how the injuries occur, isn't it? She'll be right. And it's
Yeah. And particularly when it's a safety system like your overhead guard and other devices like that, your brakes, all of those safety systems are there to protect the operator. And if there's issues with them, you really need to have experts and competent people assess them and make sure that they're okay to use.
True. Yeah. Yeah. I suppose one of the questions now really is, look, we've talked about, aspects of the testing and checking, but really once you start to get aged equipment, it's about checking the equipment more, isn't it? It's not just the periodics, but have a look at, all of those items. Look, we've talked about it just now, the forks, the lift chains, the hoses, the tubes, have they tubes corroded, the structural connections, we've got the structural welds, safety devices. It's really about checking those things more often than you would otherwise.
Yeah, and I think it's important not only to do that, but, if you're looking at purchasing a piece of aged equipment, to review all those. The other thing that should be looked at with an aged piece of equipment is, what is the best practice and what is the current standard required today? So one of the main things you'll see on older equipment, particularly if it's more than 10 years old, is that it may not have a seatbelt at all. And, we would strongly recommend, if you have an older truck, to get a seatbelt installed on the truck. It's a safety device. It's there to keep you in the seat in the event of a tip over. And, with the statistics are fairly black and white as to the prevention of injury that they provide.
Yeah, I think just to harp on that point just a little bit more is Mike's 100% right there that, if a fork truck's to tip over, often people will try and jump out of the truck, isn't it? And the first part is that seatbelt holding you in. We accept that people say, hey, it's a pain in the butt to have to put it on every time. But in the event of a tip over, we can't stress it enough. That will save your life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there are a lot of, newer technologies that are coming out on forklifts now that may be retrofittable to older ones, such as proximity systems that will detect objects close to the truck, tyre pressure gauges on heavier trucks where tyre pressure is critical to stability, cameras for viewing the environment, and also just ergonomic aids like suspension seats. A lot of older trucks had fixed seats and there's no suspension on them.
Very hard ride, wasn't it?
And they do make a big difference to, operator fatigue and I guess long-term, fatigue and potentially strain injuries of operators.
Yeah, and I think with certainly things like a suspension seat, that they're not that expensive, are they? Really, you're not like talking a Recaro race seat or something in the thing. These things are pretty. You can pick them up pretty cheap.
Yeah, and they, fairly universal mounts. They're not hard to put on. So I think a couple more things. One is I think to look at what we need to do with the truck. If you've got an aged truck, and we know that in some industries they tend to be used seasonally, like in wine harvesting, nut harvesting, where they're on a farm, they're in a shed, and they get used 3 or 4 weeks a year, is looking at what you need to do to ensure that that piece of equipment's going to be good to use for that one period of harvest. You use it during the year. And the key to that is maintaining it in storage. So when you put your truck into storage, make sure that it has a service before it goes into storage, that you grease and lubricate the masts, the chains, any fittings like that. And if it's got an IC engine, once a month or so, even though it may be up on blocks, take it off, run the engine and keep the engine in good condition.
Yep.
If it's an electric truck, make sure the battery's disconnected, reconnect the battery, run the systems, get them warm, and then shut it down again. And if you do that, keep it in good condition for those seasonal work, it's going to be a lot more reliable. You're not going to start it up after 9 months or 10 months and then you've got to go and get somebody to service it because it's not working.
Yeah, that's a good point with the seasonal stuff, isn't it? It's, before you did the big rush pulling all the harvest in and all that sort of thing, and then that's it, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
Just park it in the corner and we'll sort that out later. Nah, sort it out before. Yeah.
I think that is. And I think probably the other thing that we wanted to talk about was, with all aged equipment, when should you cut your losses?
Oh, that's the big question, isn't it? That's the $1 million question. Just like a car, isn't it? The old car when you had when you're 18.
And that's what it comes down to. As you start to get truck gets older, you're doing more maintenance on it. It's breaking down more often. Parts are becoming harder to purchase. So sometimes you can't purchase you can only purchase non-genuine items, which may not have the reliability of the original parts. So that's something that it's an individual case-by-case assessment.
Yeah, and really, I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got the one fork truck there and you've got a reliance on it, and it breaks down, there's downtime. So, and that's the biggest killer to your operations is when your equipment, whatever it is, doesn't work.
Definitely. I think that's all we wanted to cover today. But I think it's from AFITA, we are supporting the industry. Safety is our priority. So there are a number of places you can go to. We have a website, which is afita.com.au. On that, you can find guidance notes. It'll provide information. There is actually one on aged equipment. We have references to Australian and international standards. And we also have an email address that if you have questions, you can send them to the association. And someone like Craig or myself will provide a response, whether that's around equipment, whether it's around standards. And I guess the only other area I would suggest is, and that's more around licensing, what you need to do is safe work and the regulator.
Right, yes.
They're always fun to talk to.
They are. And I think one aspect with AFITA, the Australian Fork Truck and Industrial Truck Association, when you go to our website there, all this information is just free.
Yes.
We're not there to make any money from you. Like our sole goal is to make the industry safer. So if we can do that by whatever means, we'll definitely try that. So, so we're not trying to sell you anything. There's a wealth of information there. You don't have to be the experts on the fork truck standards. Let us do that for you guys. We can do that for you.
No, great. Well, Craig, it was interesting to talk to you about this. And it's a topic that comes up a lot with customers, particularly, people buying their first forklift. They buy something old.
True.
Something secondhand, and then they, they're relying on somebody to help them with it.
That's right. So we hope we provide a little bit of guidance for you out there. But yes, as Mike says, get in touch with AFITA at afita.com.au for any further information. Thank you.
Thank you.